Part 2. Into stillness with a steady hand. Across many lifetimes, they'd loved and lost, tasted victory, faced betrayal. Through countless seasons of sun and rain, he'd sat always facing the mountains, never speaking unless spoken to. Even his smile was a rare offering, like sunlight on a temple step. He was known simply as the one who stayed. His home, a moss-covered hut on the edge of the village, was seldom entered, its weathered planks seeming to absorb sound and light alike. When he did emerge, it was with the quiet grace of one who has mastered his own footsteps. Over the years, his clothes grew simpler, his gaze steadier. While others chased the fleeting winds of change, he anchored himself deeper into the earth, more rooted than the oldest tree in the village square. Now, as dusk settled and fireflies sparked in the gathering dark, he sat in the center of a clearing, enveloped by a circle of villagers. Their faces, etched with time and worry, were lit by the flickering flames of their own making. "One who stays," one of them began, his voice rough with concern. "You have kept yourself apart for so long. Your reasons are your own, and we would not pry. But the body, even strong and healthy, cannot withstand the relentless hands of time. What purpose is there in preserving what is fated to crumble?" "A purpose," the one who stayed replied, his voice a low rumble like distant thunder. "When what awaits cannot be avoided, then let it come by my hand." And so he spoke of his intention, his lifelong resolve to reach a state of such stillness that even death itself could not disturb him. The villagers listened, some in awe, some unconvinced, while a few shook their heads slowly, as if trying to dispel a haunting thought. Yet he continued, undeterred. "What is there to fear in being nothing," he said, "when all that we are now will one day cease to be anyway?" At first, it was just one day, then another, and then another still. He did not shun the world, nor did he seek to change it. He simply existed, impervious to the passage of seasons, changes in dynasty, wars, famines, pestilence, rumors of gods and demons, and the ceaseless turning of the wheel of life and death. They came to him for counsel, but he spoke little; for solace, but he offered no prayers; for comfort, but he gave no alms. He was a rock monolith in a flowing stream, unmoved by the chaos of the world, anchored in the depths of his own being. Was it fear that kept them coming back to him, or hope? Perhaps it was both. But what was it about this man, this one who stayed, that compelled them? What was it that made him their North Star, guiding them through the darkest nights of their lives? Was it his unwavering focus, his ability to sit with life's harsh truths, or was it something more profound, something that echoed the deepest yearnings of their souls? The answer, like the man himself, lay in the stillness waiting to be discovered. And so they sat with him, learning the art of stillness, hoping to catch a glimpse of the truth that shone from his eyes. As the years turned into decades and the decades into centuries, the one who stayed became a legend, a beacon in the storm. And the villagers, forever changed by his example, carried his teachings with them, ensuring that the flame of his spirit would continue to burn brightly for generations to come. This is part 2 of a longer story. If you haven't heard part 1, you can find it on another platform or by searching online. The village sat nestled between a hillside and a high ridge. Its people, rooted to the earth, traced their lives along the curves of seasons. In the market, women with baskets on their heads walked past men arguing over an ox's haunch. A young boy chased a puppy down an alley, while an old woman, leaning heavily on a gnarled staff, stopped to watch them both with a distant smile. But amid this bustling life, there was one the villagers barely acknowledged, the man who began to disappear. He had not always been still. Once he moved among the villagers like anyone else, soft-spoken, wearing ochre robes faded by time. No one knew precisely when he arrived. Some said he had once studied texts no longer remembered. Others believed he had belonged to a forgotten school of practice, but all agreed he had come seeking silence. He settled alone, just beyond the trees, in a house swallowed by moss and stillness. Those who passed might notice a faint curl of smoke above the roof, but the door never opened. The man inside lived as if already halfway gone. He followed a strict rhythm. Rising before dawn, he would sit in the central courtyard unmoving for hours, eyes closed, lips barely parting. He consumed only to sustain, never for pleasure. Forest teas, bitter roots, rare resins prepared without seasoning. He ate slowly, with meticulous grace, dipping and turning each leaf, each shard, each sprinkle, savoring the textures, the tastes lingering on his tongue. It was as if he extracted their essence, gathering their fleeting energies, before they dissipated into the day, not to feed the body, but to ease its slowing. Within his walls, there were no mirrors, no colors, only books with titles worn away, filled with diagrams and old notations on preservation and time. He studied them the way others pray, memorizing phrases that promise stillness, chanting words that coax the body toward peace. And soon, change began to show. His presence grew thinner, as if drifting from the surface of things. His movements, once fluid, grew sparse. His skin began to lose its softness, and his voice became no more than a hum. When the wind stirred through the boards, a tone with no tune, a memory with no sound, he withdrew more each day. From food, from sound, from motion. His rituals deepened. His awareness turned inward. People stopped seeking him out. Some assumed he had left, but he was still inside, waiting. Somewhere between presence and absence, a quiet question mark etched against the backdrop of rustling leaves and distant bells. One evening, a traveler claimed to see him standing beneath the canopy at dusk, arms raised, his face covered in pale clay. His lips moved, but there was no sound, only the feeling, as the traveler later recalled, as if the air itself paused to listen. After that evening, he was never seen again, yet the house remained, and slowly it began to whisper, not with voices but with absence, with the weight of something once human choosing to remain in stillness. The trees outside grew bolder, reclaiming the yard, their roots tracing patterns across the cracked courtyard. Vines crept up the walls, turning windows into blind eyes staring sightlessly into the growing green. The house sighed with each gust of wind, a lullaby of rustling leaves and swaying branches, a dirge for the nearly forgotten man who had once sought to disappear. Did he succeed, perhaps? Or maybe the silence he craved was never truly attainable, only endlessly pursued. Like the ever-encroaching trees, his spirit, too, may have become one with the stillness, its roots reaching deep into the earth, its branches swaying in time with the eternal whispers of the forest. And so the tale is told and retold, a reminder to those who listen that sometimes the most profound disappearances are not into the world, but within ourselves, a slow fading into the background, a gradual withdrawal from the melodies of life until all that remains is the echo of a half-remembered tune. A long while ago, in a faraway place, there lived a man. No one knows where he came from or how long he'd been there. All they knew was that he was always in that same spot, eyes closed, chest rising and falling, seemingly unaware of the world around him. For some, he was an oddity, a curiosity to be gawked at and whispered about. For others, a bother, a stain on the fabric of their lives. For many, he was nothing, just background noise. Only a few noticed his stillness, how it seemed to swallow the sounds around it. They felt something akin to reverence, fear, and fascination. So they gathered closer, wanting to understand the secret of his enduring. Some came bearing gifts, others with questions, but he never opened his eyes, he never spoke, he never moved. Then one day, people stopped coming. The seasons changed, the world outside moved on. But inside the house, time seemed to pause. Dust motes danced in the stale air, undisturbed, unmoving. Within that house, the man entered his final stage. But this was no inherited ritual, no sacred instruction. He was both practitioner and subject, reshaping his own ending. He had come to this house seeking solitude, a place to withdraw into, and now he was withdrawing from it. The world saw only the shell of him, the taut skin stretched over bone, the sunken eyes, the wasted frame. But within, he shed layers like a snake, discarding all that made him vulnerable, all that made him human. He emptied his life of excess, unnecessary wants, unneeded comforts, even memories. One by one, he sealed up the rooms, each a monument to some aspect of himself, some story of his past. And as the house shrank, so did his world. His meals were sparse, carefully chosen to keep the body dry. His breath slowed until it barely stirred his chest. Even light was forbidden. He sealed every window with resin-soaked cloth, until days and nights blurred into a single dim stretch of time. Outside, the sky changed from azure to pewter to charcoal, but he saw none of it. Inside, shadows deepened and lengthened, then vanished altogether. The only sound was the rasp of his breath, a metronome marking off time's relentless passing. His space became a cocoon, not of comfort, but of discipline. In it, he wrapped himself in linen, not for warmth but to retain shape, not to hide, but to hold. In the corner, a small wooden box contained his final belongings: brushes, a scrap of silk, and a stone marked with 3 symbols. No name, no message, just a sign that he had once been. At last he sat, legs folded, spine taut, palms upward. The position was not meant for rest, it was meant to endure. From that moment on, he withdrew completely. From food, from voice, from motion. His presence seemed too quiet, almost imperceptibly. The breath that once echoed faintly in the room became still. And yet something remained, perhaps not consciousness but trace, not thoughts but pattern. Something of the self anchored beyond movement, a belief that if the form did not fail, neither would what once filled it. And so he remained. No marble to encase him, no monument to mark his passing, only the faint outline of a man in a shroud, poised in stillness, sustained by an unseen force. Some say he became one with the house, a fixture like the stairs or the hearth. Others, that he simply became dust, indistinguishable from the countless particles that drifted through his window. But those who knew him best, who saw the way his eyes shone with an inner light, even in the dim oil lamp glow, believed he became pure potential, a vessel ready to be filled with whatever came next. For them, he didn't die. He just emptied until there was nothing left to hold, unmoving, unchanging, until the house itself began to shift around him, becoming part of his monument. This is the third and final part of the ritual. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a like and share with your friends. Also check out our podcast available on various platforms. Thanks for listening. time moved on. Seasons came and went. The house became a silhouette in the woods, more ruin than shelter. Ivy claimed the beams. Roots grew beneath the floor. The man became a tale told only in fragments, until one summer, a woodcutter chasing a fallen tool stumbled too far. He saw the remnants of the house, leaning like a tired breath against the hill. Against instinct, he stepped inside. He found silence, not emptiness, something denser. In the far room, beyond a door sealed with resin and time, sat the figure, upright still, draped in linen hardened by years. The air was thick with the scent of pine and stone. The form was altered by time, yet not undone by it. The features had weathered into something timeless, preserved by intention. The woodcutter did not scream, he did not flee, but something inside him shifted. When he returned, he spoke only once. "He's still there." Word traveled. Officials arrived. Historians, skeptics, none could agree. There were no chemicals, no signs of intervention. The room itself had become part of the preservation. The figure, seated as if in thought, showed no trace of natural decline. Some called it illusion, others devotion. But those who lingered too long in that dim room often said the same thing. It felt like something was watching. The authorities eventually sealed the space, not for fear, not for curiosity, but for respect. They could not explain what had been done, so they chose not to disturb it. But stories have their own will. They root into quiet places, and the tale of the still one began to stir again. In notebooks, in interviews, in places few dare to look. He was no longer named, only titled, the still one, the one who withdrew, the man who endured. Some believe he reached transcendence. Others believe he paused himself between moments. But one truth remains. He chose this, not from despair, not for glory, but from some deeper instinct, the kind we all feel when we wish not to be forgotten. They say every story has an ending. Some stories have more than one. Once upon a time, there was a boy who did not want his story to end. His name was Name. He lived in a world much like ours, only a little more alive, where the whisper of leaves could tell you the secrets of the stars, and the smile of a stranger might hold the key to forgotten magic. And yet one day the shadows grew long in Name's tale, and the melody of his life began to fade. Like an old song, the tune remained, but the singer's voice grew distant. Part 3, The Unquiet Grave. When the final note sounded and the world moved on, a piece of Name refused to let go. Something about that ending didn't feel right. Perhaps it was the unfinished business of a life half-lived, or maybe it was the echo of laughter that still resonated in the hollows of his bones. Whatever the reason, he did not rest easy in his grave. For even in death, Name was restless. The villagers, bless their simple souls, believed they'd laid him to rest, that the mound of earth and the headstone were enough to keep the past from wandering back into their quaint little town. But they were wrong as they could be, for deep within the cool embrace of the earth, something stirred. Not a ghost, not a spirit, not an apparition of bygone days, but something more substantial, something more profound, an echo that remained. Part 4, Lingering. Every full moon, when the veil between worlds is at its thinnest, whispers rise from the grave. They tell of a presence that lingers, a consciousness that remains, not as a specter to startle or a shade to scare, but as a steadfast monument to a life once lived. It is a stillness that sits in the spaces between heartbeats, a silence that sings in the rustle of leaves. To those who have eyes to see and ears to hear, the world is alive with such echoes, with remnants of lives once vibrant, now fading into the tapestry of existence. When the sun dips below the horizon and paints the sky with hues of remembrance, that's when the lingering becomes most poignant. For in the dying embers of daylight, the boundary between the seen and the unseen grows hazy, and it's in this precious sliver of time that the echo of Name is most palpable. He does not haunt the living as much as he resides within them, a quiet guest in the chambers of memory. Part 5, The Echo That Remains. Every story ends, or so we tell ourselves. A life breathes its last, and what's left fades into photographs, memories, dust. But some endings refuse to dissolve. Some figures hold their place so tightly that time itself cannot erase them. The still one left behind no message. Only a presence, a shape that refused to fade, a silence that spoke through its stillness. He prepared not for absence, but for duration. He was not trying to escape the end, he was reshaping what it meant, and what he achieved is not peace, it is presence, lingering, the kind that hums just beneath sound, waiting to be noticed. He invites us to ask, how much would you surrender, just to be remembered? If something of the self remains, long after the body ceases to move, is that legacy, or a question still unanswered? They say his form still rests, somewhere sealed away, not as relic, not as display, simply ... remaining. So if one day you wander into a forest where the trees seem to listen, or find yourself near a home where time feels slow and the wind hesitates, pause, you may hear nothing but the silence. It's his voice now, speaking not in words but in stillness. If this story left you unsettled, curious, or quietly changed, subscribe to the channel. There are more forgotten paths waiting. Until then, sit still and listen.